in the implementation of the some of the task force objectives, and that is facade conceptualization. I would like to touch on it very briefly from the standpoint of basics. You're going to be talking about design, you're going to be talking about image, you're going to be talking about selling to people and marketing the community as well as physical change. I guess I always have a little sermon on facades and what sort of message a community is presenting, and I basically asked the Center for Urban Studies if in fact we couldn't squeeze in a little bit of sermon at the dinner here. So you get a dinner and a sermon, and then you can talk after that. We won't take any contributions, but I always like to reinforce aspects about facade conceptualization. After I go through that, Brian Pichello, who is under contract with us, will talk about technologies to achieve some facade conceptualization. Brian, did everybody see? Brian is over here. Okay, he's with a technology group known as Michigan CAD. We'll talk about technologies. But first, the reason I bring up the issue about facade is that too many times communities are presenting certain pictures, but they don't necessarily know what those pictures are. At one time, I put together a very brief one-pager on positive images downtown, and I talked about at least 4 different issues, and that is good designs make for good business. Now, the only reason I'm bringing this up to you again is to reinforce some issues. Sagging cornices, peeling paint, confusing signs or lack of signs, bricked up windows, motley array of materials on facades do not convey care in business operation. Now, they may not be directly related, but it's what sort of a message they convey. Lack of pride through shabby image does not convey economic opportunities for prospective customers or investors. Number 1. Number 2, little improvements have a cumulative impact. Whatever that term is. What? How do you say that word? No wonder it wasn't typed wrong. Okay. I'm a good reader, I'm just not a good speller. Anyway, the situation is we don't have to conquer the world with one major improvement. It's a whole lot of little improvements that really have the effect on the community. Downtown is perceived through those little changes as an ever-changing, ever-improving area. And that it is not a one-time attempt. It is an ongoing situation, not a last-ditch effort to do something. It's an ongoing situation. The third thing is an appealing image. What do we say with our image? Now remember, you people are going to be talking about implementing a lot of your objectives, and that implementation is going to give a message. Now, what do you want the message to be? Quaint, small town, urban, resort, closed, open, friendly, bustling, heritage, Art Deco, informative, private, caring, lazy, progressive, out of step, convenient, confusing. We can give any and all of those messages at any one time, and that affects what people are going to do, whether in fact they're going to stop, whether they're going to have that impression. Remember, I don't know if you can remember 7 or 8 months ago when I talked basically about the Main Street program, and I normally give the story that my wife travels around with me during the summer, and she says, through certain communities, she says, Bob, don't slow down and lock the doors. Okay. People react to perceptions. And the image, the message that we're going to send from the community and are presently sending, positive or negative, is going to affect how people are going to react. And the last thing is promotion. What are we selling our community to be? A lot of that will come out in the image issue. Whether it's public space improvements, whether it's buildings, signage, traffic patterns, all of these things will be selling something to our community. And finally, can the community meet those expectations of whatever we're trying to sell? Very quickly, I'd like to go through slide presentation. Okay.
Turn one off.
I'll travel throughout the state of Michigan, and I will try, if I'm in your way, tell me to sit on the floor or something. There are a variety of different styles. There are a variety of different styles. Not any one style is necessarily bad, but it gives a particular image. There's the original, and there's a more modern approach. There's half and half. Now, this is where it gets confusing. Before you had the original image, and then you had a fairly modern style right next to one another. It's somewhat uncomfortable. When you have something like a colonial style, which is the bottom half, and a Italianate, which is the top half, that's also a little confusing. A brickwork and a blockwork. Okay, that might be a little confusing. What is the message you're trying to send out? Maybe just little people go in this place. It always gives me the image that just a lot of people, small people go in. It's not real. It's not real. What are we trying to convey here? The Yocums live here, I think. Is this, is there some sort of message that we're trying to convey here? And how does it fit in with the rest of the block? Well, it's colorful. Eclectic at best, yes. You have to be careful about whether, in fact, you're confusing somebody when they look at it and say, geez, I wonder what in the world they sell in there. Or they say, boy, this is really cute. I think I want to go into this place. Be careful about that message. I think they sell shoes here. Evidently, this is the European place to be downtown. A lot of other buildings have used the original architecture. Some have modified them a little bit. As you can see, the windows in the second from the left, basically signs that are complementary in scale, and then you have that very nice one. We have to be careful with what we're trying to do. It may look nice, it may look modern, but does it really fit? What sort of a message is it? You go to this place evidently to buy large awnings. I don't know what else you would do here. Please, when you look at buildings and you look at what you're trying to convey, keep in mind that it might be cute, but would you buy pizza from this place or the same place? Just style. That was just a cleanup. Is this a business that you might want to go into? Or is this a place that you might want to go into? I'm not necessarily saying that you have to go right back to the original historic architectural style, but be careful about what sort of image you're conveying out there. Understand the pieces of the property, not only the parkland and how pedestrians get into that, not only the parking lot and what the accessibility is and the landscaping and the pedestrian access into it. Facades are also designed in a way that they have very important pieces. They have a top, a cornice, which finishes off the building. They have maybe an upper residence or office, second story office, main showcase area for retail. Make sure you understand the parts and how they best go together. In some cases, look at this side, in some cases, it's just a paint job. That's the same building. Just a paint job. It brings some life to the building. It brings some life. Again, maybe you would have purchased something from the all green one, but that conveys a certain message to you, whatever that is. You have to keep in mind that there are ways to clean up buildings. Maybe it's just a paint job. In some cases, you have to orient the main building. This is a major space between windows here. This is a major space between windows. It's the same building. They brought out the character rather than having that potpourri of first floor and bland second and third story. Sometimes a paint job will just pick up what you have. A lot of architecture featured, and then you can accentuate it. Sometimes you have to create the image. Common paint is nice. They didn't change any windows. They accentuated the architectural features, and they painted on a cornice to finish off the job. There's nothing up there but paint. But they implied, they gave you that image that it's a complete piece. Sometimes you have situations that you can't change. You have this tile that is going to be there. If you remove the tile, you have a hole in the wall. So they just painted a common color and then they covered it with an awning. That advertisement, they also covered that somewhat different approach to style. Sometimes it's a little bigger than that, but you want to convey to the people that, by the way, here's something that you might be interested in. We're trying to make it look good. We're keeping within the architectural style, accenting its features. We've tried this in many communities of, by the way, let's try something new. Let's try Western or Alpine or the Bavarian that I talk about. And it may be just a simple removal. What do we want to convey as far as a message? I'm not saying that you necessarily have to remove everything. I'm saying just understand what sort of a message that particular unit is conveying. Maybe it's just a paint job, maybe it's just a cleanup, maybe the sign needs to be improved, maybe it's a total change. But be aware of the message that's coming out and be aware of what sort of message you want to send. Sometimes you have to look at different drawings and different ideas. We'll talk a little bit about the technology to help you out with that. Try different things. In this situation, there was an aluminum coverage that basically handled most of the side of that downtown in Ipsy. They looked at old photos, they saw potential. They took out the siding, painted it. They have something that people really want to look, in many cases they want to go and look at the building, which also brings them into the building to buy bikes and such. Remember what sort of a message you're sending. That's the same shot, just a simpler way to do it. Remember that there has to be a separation between vehicular and pedestrian, and that is a critical issue here. We keep hearing about that within the surveys and such. That through design and through planning and the realization of how people feel, you have to separate and create that either through landscaping or actual separation of parking from the street and such. What sort of image do you want to create? What sort of atmosphere? What sort of environment? That, fairly modern for that. Now, you don't have to remove everything, just understand what that message is that comes out. Okay, I did that very quickly because I wanted to also get into technology. The Wayne State program and the Commercial Revitalization Initiative talked about the possibility, and initially in the conceptual standpoint, we were going to have facade conceptualization equipment, the whole entire program. Now, the state didn't necessarily come to the table with money to fulfill some of that for whatever reason. However, there is a good possibility that that technology will be achieved in the not too distant future. However, during this interim time, we wanted to show you at least some of the possibilities through technology, and we did in fact contract with Michigan CAD to at least show us what are the potentials of looking at different alternatives for facades and such. And Brian, I'd like you to present your piece on it.
Thank you for having me tonight. Really enjoyed working on this project also. I started about 30 days ago, and my first visit to Wayne was about a month and a half ago. I had never been here before, so I was interested in seeing what I would find when I got here. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about computer imaging technology. The way I achieved this slide, for example, was to take that original fountain and project it into a symbol representing the state of Michigan. using a computer imaging technology. We photographed selected sites like this one and scanned them into a computer that had the right software and video board to be able to project these images. These images could be turned into videotape format, or you can have a display in a hard copy like this in a slide, or even a photographic printout. This site was selected mainly because as you drive in West Michigan Avenue, this is the first, I want to call it, shopping district that you find. And the first thing that I noticed and observed was that the trees seemed to prevent me from determining what was behind, what type of store I might need to shop at. As a matter of fact, when I first came here on a Saturday, it was with my wife, and we were going to go shopping. And so that was kind of, I wanted to find the stores that would be most interesting. This is one of the things that I noticed. So with the computer technology, we have the ability to take out a couple trees and see what's behind it. And what I actually did was photograph in segments all the way down this street to have reference points so that I would know what was behind there. Well, we took the trees out and found a whole lot of brick and a lot of opportunities for advertising. And so we gave the restaurant a new awning, something that would let people know better what was actually there.
Frank, just a time out. There's a pointer right up there on the top of that ledge.
Oh,
Okay? You want to use that to point out the restaurant that you're speaking of.
all right, this is the awning that we're speaking of right here.
The Omega.
Right, the Omega restaurant. And the awning's a nice touch, but it seems a little bare, and maybe the trees weren't such a bad idea. The main thing about the technology is we can go back now and see what it would look like with the trees returned back into view. And that's sort of one of the main themes, is that you can try it before you build it, which is something that really hasn't been able to do before. It's usually too late. It's built, it's over with. One of the things that we also noticed was that the street itself needed to be warmed up a little bit. And by this, we put in a brick paving pattern here along the curb area. And to give you a better idea, we'll zoom up here.
You can, again, there are different technologies, and you can try different patterns. He's got the brick patterns around the trees. He's got a front brick pattern to the curb. You can try a variety of things. Previously, we would talk to a landscape architect or an architect and say, by the way, draw me up something that represents what we should have in the downtown. They would take considerable time to put together a sketch, conceptual ideas. Once you got it, you say, well, that's nice, but it's not quite what I want. It's a lot of time, a lot of effort, in some cases a lot of dollars put in that. With this technology, as well as several other current technologies, you have the capability to play with the picture and try different things.
That's a good point. The different technologies, too, can be merged together. People know of computer-aided design. If there didn't happen to be a building there, we could create a building and then put it onto the site. So this could be used for some undeveloped parcel of land. This was the next site that was selected, mainly because here we have the State Theater, and in this area is a wide open space with a building set quite a way back off the street. So as you're driving down, this is what you see. And I noticed they're renovating the theater, trying to attract people down there. Well, we're trying to maybe make this a more appealing site to improve the perception passing down the street. So all we did here, first of all, was clean up the brick. We kept the original brick, just cleaned it up with some type of a chemical. And the theme here in all these renovations is keeping the budget low. We know that that's usually a consideration. We're trying to do things to the building that aren't major cost prohibitive. Zoom here for you. Okay. Now on the next one, instead of an awning concept, we kept standard font style lettering to be a little bit more consistent with the other buildings in this grouping, with the lettering on the building. And then again, maybe we want a more drastic change. So in one of my more creative moods, I came up with contempo colors. And again, it's probably better to see it here now until after the fact. When you're driving down West Michigan, you say, oh, what did they do? But then again, this is what it looks like now, so you can be the judge. What would be better to have there, this or that? Well, you're not restricted to just making a choice here. There we came up with a little bit more calm color.
There's also something else in that you played with.
Over here, to break up the expanse of the wall nicely without painting on it or putting signage, we put a tree that does well by the street and some complementary flowers here, and we could do that whole space in a nicely landscape design and really add quite a bit. After looking at this with the type of lettering, we thought maybe an awning on there would be a little bit more appropriate. And one of the things that we could notice here is that some of the businesses don't really exist yet. And that was part of it. You know, designing a building with a specific business in mind is different than one that's not there. And I'll get back to that point a little bit later on. Here we can see an example of a layout, which is something that came up to me as a possible concept, something that might be needed to separate the parking space from the actual driving space, and also to give the pedestrians a chance to cross this road. I walked up and down taking pictures, and it was kind of hard to get across, except if I was at the corners. So this might be a little bit more friendly for the pedestrian. We used, again, a simple brick pattern in here just to break it up a little bit and add some color.
And Brian has the capacity, through the technology, to put that leg out wherever you want along the sidewalk. I know that Mary brought up the issue that there really isn't anywhere, particularly where there's a lot of pedestrian traffic down by the theater and such, there really isn't anywhere that you feel comfortable crossing there. Now that doesn't mean you're going to be safe crossing there, but it starts to imply to the people driving down the street that maybe this is a little different than the rest of the street.
This is a blown up close-up of the same view. With the way it's set up on the computer, you can zoom into any area, and actually, when it's not in slide form, but actually in the computer form, you could enlarge and actually see the State Theater in full size, even though it's way down the road. So you have the ability to design building by building by building. We didn't really give the whole entire grouping of buildings a theme. We tried to do one building and make that more appealing. But you could do all the facades and come up with an entire theme concept. Even though more people pass by the front of the stores, the majority of the customers are going to have to go into the back to park. And when I drove back there, I wasn't really sure of what the stores contained. The more of the frontage had the signage, and whereas in the back, the parking was there, but you really didn't know. We had a business here that doesn't exist, so I mean, I can see where you would run into difficulties when there's nobody there. You can't very well ask somebody to improve the building. So you got a catch-22 situation here. But with the technology, we can possibly market our buildings better to prospective business owners. And when I looked at this, I'd say, well, what type of business would go here? Who would take a risk? And usually a small entrepreneur or business, family-owned business, somebody's going to spend their life savings on starting their dream business. Is going to go there. Well, what's going to attract them there? Well, maybe what would give somebody a chance to be there would be something that would be unique, something that would be very colorful. And here the city and the business owner can come to some type of terms and agreement of what's going to be projected. It has to be good for the city and also for the business owner. We came up with a conceptual business, even put balloons in the windows for some merchandising ideas, because that's a very big part of storefronts, the window treatments. In here you can see we've done some landscaping, just with some holly shrubs, some euonymus and a crabapple tree with some lava rock. Nothing very elaborate, real low maintenance. We noticed a lot of trees around in the back, but a lot of islands that were left unlandscaped. So we just put some in here. We cleaned up this building quite a bit. You notice we took, I'll go back to it in a second, there was some pallets that were on the loading dock and didn't really know if that was being used or not. Attempted to give you some sense of a pathway here, like entrance, go this way, and we expanded on that. Here we came up with another different type of business. This is a cafe, maybe somewhere that you can go in and have different types of coffees, croissants, or buy imported coffees, a place to sit down. Seemed like a nice idea for a business there. That color is a little bit more, I want to say, or less risky than the pink. Okay, it seems to blend in a little bit better. But this is what we have now. And in the next concept, we painted this building a different color. And we also painted up the above part of the back of these buildings, which really needed a little bit of work. There's considerable rust that had run down the walls. I have 32,000 colors, and I think I tried about almost every one, trying to come up with this particular building color, so you can be there all day. Just between this color and this one, trying to see something that would flow together. But you can also notice, and I'll zoom in, the sign here says West Michigan Avenue Shops, which gives us an idea that this is a shopping district. You go through this little alleyway, and in the front would be your entrances. So by leaving it white, it was something that was very visible and attracted people's attention quite a bit. You can turn on the lights now, thanks. You know, if anybody had any questions, let me know now.
What's the cost for somebody to just come out and do what you do here? In fact, for one individual business to have something.
Individual business?
Yeah, for an owner wanting to have a view of his own business that way, or his expenses be the necessary.
It's kind of hard to know unless you know what the project is. Usually it's
Same
done,
thing you're just doing.
it's done on an hourly basis. So we can establish a budget and what needs to be done. Most buildings, just to give you an idea of how long it takes, that entire presentation of all the building was done in about 20 hours of actual retouching time. There was time spent taking the photographs, having meetings to outline our ideas, scanning in takes some time, but you can do usually any facade building in a couple hours and have a pretty nice concept. If it's something just like we did simple changes, we did color and simple lettering and signage. We didn't get into a lot of heavy-duty architectural detail and custom design because that's a matter of taste. Whereas here we tried to do things that were major impacts to perception of the customers, which were colors and signage. As far as specific details, we didn't spend that kind of time. So maybe to renovate a building, it might be anywhere from a couple $100 to $1,000 or something like that, depending on how much time. So, you know, depending on how detailed you want to get.
Brian, just a comment on your first slide when you were addressing the Omega and the line of trees down that part of Michigan Avenue there. We had a quick huddle here. None of us knew there were that many trees there.
Oh, really?
It was interesting that the eye is selective in what you see, and we did not recognize the fact that there were that many trees down that stretch of the road.
Don't ask Dave Zuckerman that question.
I don't disagree that they're there, but it's just interesting how people that are familiar with that see things differently.
Quite honestly, two things. As you're accustomed to the area and you come farther along that West Michigan Avenue, you will get in front of the businesses, and if in fact you're not traveling too fast, you can see what they are. Or you already know what they are and you visually create that picture. Also, the other side is many times we see the creative wall with different colors on it, and we get used to it, such that we don't notice it as much as somebody just coming into town
Sure.
and saying, what in the world is that? Well, we said, hey, that's our wall. Even though we say it should be changed, we get too used to it, and so we don't notice a lot of things.
Sure.
The real value, and I've had a lot of fun walking through communities, and I said, do you realize that that sign is a little out of, angle with those? Oh, we never noticed it, and they've lived there all their life because it becomes too commonplace. You really have to think about the person who is going to get that first perception,
Sure.
that first message.
Brian, did you take a slide of the next block from Wayne Road going toward the theater in terms of the trees?
The next block,
West of the one that you led with?
that's where the cable vision.
Yes.
There isn't any trees, I don't believe, in
Okay.
that block. That block's
Sure.
totally just frontage. Yeah, I took photographs. As a matter of fact, the first time I came out, I took 36 photographs, which were hot spots or potential areas that we could work on. The second time I came back, I focused in on the